And let me note that Donald Trump is now walking in to the courtroom, accompanied with his legal team. We're going to listen in.
This is an assault on America. Nothing like this has ever happened before. There's never been anything like it. Every legal scholar said this case is nonsense. It should never have been brought. It doesn't deserve anything like this. There is no case, and they've said it. People that don't necessarily follow or like Donald Trump said this is an outrage that this case was brought. This is political persecution. This is a persecution like never before. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. And again, it's a case that should have never been brought. It's an assault on America. And that's why I'm very proud to be here. This is an assault on our country. And it's a country that's failing. It's a country that's run by an incompetent man who's very much involved in this case. This is really an attack on a political opponent. That's all it is. So I'm very honored to be here. Thank you very much.
And there is Donald Trump. He did say one thing that is accurate. This is a historic case, one like we have not seen in our country's history. A former president facing criminal charges and about to go into that courtroom as this case is going to get underway. He was accompanied by his lead attorney here, Todd Blanche. He said several things that are not true that he has been saying repeatedly about this case. You've likely heard the fact checks of them before, that this is a case that is politically motivated and being led by his opponent here, President Joe Biden. That is not the case. This was a case that was brought by the Manhattan District Attorney. A jury indicted him in this case and agreed to that and signed off on it. That is why we are here where we are today. But all of this has a political lens to it as well. And you heard Donald Trump mention that as he talked about his status as the presumptive Republican nominee in the 2024 election. He said he is proud to be here. And Paula, of course, that goes back to what we have been seeing, which is how he's approaching this from a campaign perspective and what that's going to look like. You know, we've been talking about jury selection and how, you know, just his presence in the courtroom. He knows that he has that presence. We've seen him, you know, talk out loud during proceedings before where the jury was in the room because he believes ultimately that he personally can shape people.
He can, for good or for bad. You know, I'm told that he did learn some lessons in terms of how his decorum impacted the outcomes of the civil trials that we've seen where he lost and lost badly. So it's going to be fascinating to watch. This is his first criminal trial. Unlike the 3 civil cases, this is the first time he faces the possibility of jail. And it will be fascinating to watch his decorum inside the courtroom. Obviously, he likes to spar with the judge and prosecutors as well, but it's a different thing when you're in front of the jury. They can make all kinds of inferences from you. So that's going to be a big issue here, watching not only what he does outside the court, but more importantly, inside the courtroom, especially when jurors or potential jurors are present.
You're looking live inside a New York courthouse. We are just minutes away from jury selection in Donald Trump's historic criminal trial. We're told that the former president is now inside the courtroom, where hundreds of potential jurors will be in and out today as prosecutors and the defense work to try to come up with a way to find a jury to sit in Trump's hush money trial. Let's check in with CNN's Paula Reed. She's outside the courthouse getting live updates on what's happening behind closed doors in the courtroom. Paula, what's happening right now?
So, Jake, there are no cameras inside the courtroom. We are relying on our amazing team inside to give us updates. And we have learned that former President Trump is now inside the courtroom that will soon be filled with potential jurors. Now, we've learned that he is sitting right now with his attorney, lead attorney Todd Blanche, reading these updates from our colleague. They're apparently having a pretty active back and forth. And so far, he appears to be in good spirits, all things considered. I mean, he is now going to be the first former president of the United States to face a criminal trial. And unlike the 3 civil cases that we've covered over the past few months here in New York, this is the first time that he will potentially face jail time if he is convicted. Now, last week he said that, look, jury selection is just a matter of luck, and you can be sure that he'll be watching each of these potential jurors very closely as they go through this process over the next few hours.
All right, Paula Reed, thanks so much. I'm joined now by Bill Brennan. Bill, Brennan served as an attorney on a 2022 Trump Organization case in front of the same judge as this one. Bill, thanks so much for joining us. So obviously, you know better than I do, jury selection can make or break a trial. You've done jury selection in that very courtroom with that very judge, Merchan. What are you going to be looking for? What's the best advice you could give the defense?
Well, I mean, when we had the case in 2022, the former president was not in the room, so it's a big difference. There's security issues, there's people movement issues, but just the presence of a former president, I think, impacts on people. And I would say just, take it slow, go through each individual questionnaire and focus on the prospective juror you're interviewing at the time. That's really how you have to do it. And don't worry about how long it takes. It takes how long it takes, basically.
So obviously Manhattan and the surrounding boroughs are not exactly known as being ground zero for support of Donald Trump. What's the best way to make sure you get a fair jury for a Republican president in a largely Democratic city?
Well, Jake, here's the problem with what you just said. Most people, I think, the way even you phrased it, Manhattan and the surrounding boroughs, the Bronx, Staten Island, Queens, Brooklyn, people think that's where you pull from, but you don't. When the Manhattan DA files charges, you only pick from the island of Manhattan. So, you need that cop from Staten Island, you need that firefighter from Queens to kind of balance things out. But your subset is the island of Manhattan. And I just can tell you my personal experience was that that's not a great demographic in this case. My thoughts from having done it once.
So how, given, I appreciate the correction. You're right. I did think that Staten Island would be part of it. Staten Island obviously went for Trump, the only borough to do so in the 2020 election. So given the limitations of Manhattan, how do you do it? How do you find a fair jury?
Well, I'll tell you, Jake, when we were doing it, and Judge Marchand is a very serious man. He's very smart. He's extremely courteous. I mean, I'm not getting into people's biases or prejudice. I'm not qualified to do that. I can tell you, having spent 7 weeks with the man, he's a gentleman. And he gave us as much time as we needed. However, he wanted to get a jury seated. So we had a lady.
Bill, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Just
for 1 second, I apologize. We're just showing the first image of Donald Trump from inside the courtroom. It's a still photograph that we're showing there. I want to make sure our viewers know what they're looking at. Please continue. I apologize.
We had a lady come up as a prospective juror. I've been picking juries for about 35 years. She looked good to me. A lady in her mid-40s of Irish extraction. She spoke with a brogue. She worked in an Irish pub. And in our questionnaire, questions 29 and 30 said, do you have any strong feelings about the former president? And if so, would they affect your ability to be fair? And she checked them. So I said, well, ma'am, would they be positive or negative feelings? And she says, oh, I despise that man. And I said, I guess it was late in the day, Jake. And I said, oh, come on, don't sugarcoat things for me. Speak your mind. She says, oh, speak me mind. I hate him. And Jake, 3.5 decades since Ronald Reagan was president, I've been knocking around picking juries. I was floored, and I looked over at Judge Marchand, expecting him to meet my gaze and dismiss her, and he said, now, wait a minute. He's got his robe on and the pomp and circumstance of the courtroom. If I instructed you on the law, could you put those feelings aside and be fair? And she said, like most people say when they see the judge in that black robe, sure, Judge. So she made it to the second round. I got her out a different way, but it was like rows of shark teeth. They just kept coming, and she wasn't the dangerous juror, Jake, because she answered the questions. The juror who just answers no questions, and you just have a gut feeling. You say, if it's a male jury, you say, sir, you seem to be the perfect juror on paper. There's nothing about the former president that gives you, nah, I'm fine. Put me in, I'll be great. And that's the juror that I worry about, the juror who has some type of ulterior motive to get on that case to settle a score.
All right, Bill Brennan, thank you so much.